Three, two, one, and we are live. All right. Hey, Jess.
Hey,
Good
good
to see
morning.
you. I'm glad we are able to connect finally.
Finally, man, that was a tricky one. Sorry about that. Life.
You're good. I'm sure you're busy.
Yeah.
You have, how many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids.
You have four. Okay.
Yeah.
And they look like they were all kind of still school age and stuff.
Yeah, so my oldest is a freshman in high school, so she goes to Kingsburg High, so she's distance learning. And then I've
Okay.
got a 7th grader at Emmanuel, and so she's on campus still. We're still working out all the details. I'm sure everyone's seen all all that in the news, but she's on campus still. We're thankful. It's a good fit for her. And then my 2 younger boys are at Hanford Christian, and they're also on campus. So I kind of got a lot going on with school. So
Did were all of them in Christian school their whole time until the high school student?
yeah, so we live out in the country, and so we're kind of in the middle of a lot of towns. Like everything is like 20 minutes away. And so, yeah, Hanford Christian has just kind of been the best option. It's a phenomenal school. I was a teacher. I was raised by a teacher. So education was important to me, but
Yeah.
how it played out was like more important,
Yeah.
the dynamics of it, the culture of the education of the school. So Hanford Christian is it's like a diamond in the rough place. So my oldest went K through 8 there. And just the way things are working with waivers and distance learning, my 7th grader needed to be on campus. And so they had a spot for her at Emmanuel, so that worked out for her. But yeah, hopefully the boys can go all the way through.
I saw not too long ago you posted something, and I wasn't able to kind of look into it, but it was you were talking about how I feel like it was Emmanuel that you guys had won the right to go back to school or something.
Right.
What was going on with that?
So Emmanuel's in Fresno County, and
Okay.
Fresno County said early on they wouldn't be giving any waivers, just don't bother type of thing.
Yeah.
But Emmanuel felt really strongly that they should get kids on campus. So they went through a lot of like processes to make sure it was safe. They have a lot of things in place to keep kids safe. They actually tested, and a large population of the school found they had herd immunity.
Yeah.
So we're at school, I think 6 weeks with no cases.
Okay.
So it's been a really good thing, but we've had to pursue, things in court, and we won some and we lost some, and it's just going to be ongoing, but really their heart is to kind of push for all kids to have the option to be on campus. Some kids really need to be, so.
Yeah. I've talked to a few. I have 5 kids, but they've all been homeschooled all their life and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it didn't really affect them at all.
Sure.
Other than like different classes or church not meeting and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's been interesting. I talked to one of my nieces, and she's just like struggling. Like she does not like the online.
Right.
But then my stepdaughter, she loves it. She just does her stuff. She does it whenever. She doesn't even go into the classes at all. She just does her work.
Yeah.
And so I think in your post you actually said we want everyone to have the right to kind of do school.
To choose. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was homeschooled K through 12.
Really?
So I know that homeschool life. And I think from that, the combination of being homeschooled my whole life until college, and I went to a private Christian college, but my dad is a public school teacher, and then I became a public school teacher. I think having experienced sort of the wide range of types of education, I think I feel passionate about parents getting to choose really what each one of their kids need. Because, like I said, my high schooler is doing great distance learning. It's her personality to be a self-starter. She's fine. My 7th grader needs people. She needs her, and I do better when she has other people like as an authority for her for different things. We have a better relationship. So it really is like about parents knowing their children and having the freedom to choose what each one needs. And I'm not surprised. I've got kids in 3 different schools. I always had a feeling we'd be spread out because my kids are all so different, and I knew that I'd have to pay attention to that with their learning, you know,
yeah, I love that. I love that, that you're aware of those differences. I mean, they're ginormous sometimes. I mean, people always ask, they ask me a lot of questions about homeschooling when they find out, but I'm really not the one. Their mom, you know, we were married for 10 years and we've been divorced for almost about 10 years, but we've always kind of worked together really good. And she's always handled the technical side of that, and whether they were in a charter school for a little time or on her own. But I never realized homeschooling, to me, I had two extremes in my brain. One was like these kids that sat at a desk for 10 hours a day and they did more work than you would even in school, just like crazy smart, or just like lots of homework. And then I had family and friends who did homeschooling and it seemed like their kids didn't even learn how to read. It was, you know, I don't know if that was on purpose or an accident, but they didn't really get educated.
Right.
And so, and then there was kind of also, I guess the third idea was there was families in the hills and the mountains that homeschooled, and they would dress all in white, and it was like an Amish kind of a feeling more.
Right. Yes. But then, that's all three of those are accurate.
Yeah, but even then, like I started learning there's unschooling, there's, you know, charter, where like you're kind of homeschooled, but you go to a class once or twice a week. It's really interesting, and it's the more you know about the options. I mean, some people never even get to look into that because maybe both parents are working or whatever. But with your dad being a public school teacher, what do you know what it was that they wanted to have you homeschooled?
You know, sort of when sorry, there's a fly in here. I live on a dairy farm, so there's gonna fly around sometimes. My dad, I mean, he kind of said, I remember he said a few different things. You know, I was a public school teacher and that's why you were homeschooled. You know, he saw sort of the stuff that he didn't love about it, that he just wanted us to be educated differently, primarily from a biblical standpoint, and how most of the time in public schools, that's just not possible. So that was the real heart behind it, just wanting us to have a biblical worldview. And when I was in school, there were not a lot of options. It was public school, private school, homeschool. There wasn't a lot of charters happening. Private school was around, but my dad was a teacher. We couldn't afford to send. I was oldest of 5, so that's a lot of kids to send to private school. And my mom just really wanted to be with us. And so, you know, I appreciated that choice that they made. It was the best choice for their family and for us. And for different reasons, I chose not to homeschool. You know, I see both sides of why it's really valuable, why it's a really, really important option for parents to have and to always have as a freedom to choose. But for our family, when we weighed, you know, the options, it just wasn't the best option for us. But I think in that post you're referring to, like, I just advocate for parents choosing what's best for their kids. So I'm pro homeschool, I'm pro charter school, I'm pro public school, I'm pro unschooling. You know, I just feel like it's all really important in its own right. But I do think that, you know, in this climate that we're in, we also have to consider, like you said, parents who can't choose and who are kind of locked into a certain type of situation, and that kids are suffering because their hands are tied. They don't get to choose. They don't get to, you know, and there are kids in the Central Valley, just really close to us, that school's their safe place, and that's where they eat, and it's where they have advocates, and it's where they're being seen and known and loved. And so I think that's where I can get feisty about it, because I see these kids who really need, my kids would be fine at home, you know, they're safe here. We've been a part of a Safe Families ministry where we actually step in as community to families in the area who need community, who have had issues with homelessness or not having a job, and we take kids in while their parents figure out the details. And so we've seen firsthand how vital school is, school programs, school meal programs, before school care, after school care, how those are really vital for their family's survival, to be able to stay together as a unit. And that's the goal, is to keep families together, and public education in a lot of ways helps with that for some families.
It's easy for us homeschoolers to kind of probably just see the negative a lot of times on public schools, and it's a vital thing in our system, at least right now. I mean, I'm glad they're there. I just always think of how can we do things better, public school, homeschool, whatever. So, that's cool. So you mentioned kind of, were you raised in a Christian home?
Yep.
Was it in this area, Central Valley?
In the area, in the Central Valley. My dad, with being a public school teacher and coach, he had jobs at several different, local high schools, and we usually ended up living in whatever community he was teaching in at the time, because we usually kind of dove into community life as a family, especially since we were homeschooled. I spent a lot of time on baseball fields and football fields at practice with my dad, and so that, that coach's life is different in the hours that are kept there. And so, especially in the Central Valley, a lot of the towns here are football towns, and my dad was a football coach. So our weekends were full. And so our family life time together looked different. And that was another motivation, I think, for home education, is that we could be flexible with that. And so my parents are believers, my siblings are believers, everyone's kind of spread out and around. And but yeah. Yep.
Did you guys kind of have a home church growing up? Was it one church the whole time, or were you moving different churches?
Yeah, we were at different churches. I grew up in a fairly large church in Fresno for a while, and then we moved to some really small churches. And then my parents chose to even home church for a long time too. So we did a lot of things at home.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that you kind of got I like how you're getting different perspectives from all these, the big churches, the small church, even the home church. I've been going the last couple of weeks out to the Well Madera with David.
Yeah, Dave's great.
He's been having something Saturday nights in his backyard.
Oh, cool.
And it was more of that kind of home church feeling, just kind of around the campfire type of thing. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I miss, with community nowadays, right now, it's you forget how fun it is to get around actual people.
I know.
So
it's funny that we're like such a connected community and so disconnected. Social media really gives the illusion of connection, and actually I feel like, we're the most disconnected we've ever been as a society in some ways because of social media, that illusion of connection. But then now add, COVID, and we're really only connecting on Zoom or on Instagram or whatever. And so, it's an interesting time for sure.
It's not too bad, but it's different. I would say it's just something different, and it's nice to get around flesh and blood again.
Yep,
so.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
So kind of growing up in that, you mentioned how many brothers and sisters did you say you had?
I have 4 younger.
Okay. Are you the oldest?
Yeah.
Nice. So did you I'm always curious of that moment where people, because you're a believer now,
mm-hmm.
did you ever have a moment where you kind of took ownership of it, where it was like this is the moment that I chose, or was it kind of gradually you always were a Christian, you stayed a Christian?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably, we talked a little briefly before we started the broadcast about Regeneration. Mm-hmm. And it's a program launched out of our church, The Well, and it's just really a time to slow down the gospel. You really examine your trust in the Lord, areas you're not trusting God, areas you're not believing God. And you spend time really examining your life as a whole. And you actually, one step is an inventory where you actually take account of all the ways you've offended people, sinned against people, been sinned against. It's quite a broad process of where you're taking account really for your life up until the present. And I think that, I had kind of realized that I always loved God. I always wanted to follow God, but I also really wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to, figure out life, so to speak. And I think that part of that being home when I wasn't home, finally in college, I felt like I was for the first time really deciding and figuring out who I was and what I really believed about things. And, it was interesting going to a small Christian college. There's a lot of pastors' kids, a lot of missionary kids, and it was a interesting time for me to go, man, I never imagined that hypocrisy would be like, so can you be a Christian and live like that? And, I really, as an 18-year-old, was discovering some things for the first time in a lot of ways. And really having to think through like belief systems that I always just were in place for me, that I really had to decide, like, what do I think about that? Like, what do I believe? What does scripture say about that? And where do I land? So I knew that I always wanted to follow God, but I wouldn't say that I was a regenerate believer until I was 21.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's when I really surrendered my life to the Lord in a way that I didn't feel like I was holding things back, where I really did commit to following him, not just like saying that I would, or mostly, and then having this other part that I didn't believe him for, or, so I would say, yeah, there was a chunk of years that I knew it, but I just still wasn't really sure. Some of the things that I was wrestling through, I don't want to say I didn't like it, but some of the belief systems in place, I was like, man, I don't feel freedom here, or this doesn't jive for my personality, or this doesn't, and so taking the time to really look at scripture of, in those things. And then, 21, I was 21 before, this was right before I met my husband. And, so although I can see like times where I surrendered in different ways, I feel like that's when I really became a different person, so to speak, where I felt a shift in my whole person, then. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you kind of growing up as a church kid really enjoy all your church kind of experience, or was it kind of a thing you didn't want to do? And
no, I mean, I liked it. I think that we went from a big church where there was lots of Awana people, youth group. And then when we moved to a smaller church, we actually were the only kids in a church. I went to church with like 90-year-olds, and that was a sweet ministry we had as a family. I did not like it, but I wouldn't say I had a full experience in, like, I didn't get to have like a youth group experience. I didn't get to have a youth pastor, type of experience where there was people mentoring me in my faith outside of my parents. And so I feel like that I do wish I would have had more people in my life like that were people who could come alongside me, and older women who could encourage me as a high schooler, as a college student. And it's part of my passion now, is to come alongside girls that are a season or two behind me, just to encourage them and kind of like, hey, I paid the dumb tax here. Like, here's how this went when I tried it that way, and just to give them a safe place to process and fail and be loved and known in a way that's difficult for parents to do. I see my daughters have those people in their life, and I'm so grateful, because they need people besides me. They need people with a different perspective. They need people with different life experiences. And I can't be everything to my kids. That's not my job. It's to be everything to them. And so I think there's that part of that I would have loved to have a not a bigger church, but like, kind of that experience. So like I said, since I had all of it, I had big church, I had little church, I had home church. So I just kind of had we had good community around us, but so there were parts I enjoyed and parts that I didn't.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you were like in high school and stuff, what was what was Jess kind of thinking or dreaming of in that time of your life? Were you was your mom a stay-at-home? She was doing the
Yep.
homeschooling?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You always want to get into teaching yourself, or?
You know, that's a funny question, because looking back, like what I know that I'm passionate about now, I would have gone like a way different direction than what I did. And some of that was connected to belief systems, you know, about what women should do and what their roles are. And so some of that, as that's come, like, not into question, because I see clearly in scripture how God's laid out, you know, women and our giftings and our roles. And I align with scripture there, but I think there's a lot of room for women to be creative in their roles, and in the freedom they can have in the roles that God's designed for them, specifically, that only we can do, you know. I think there's a lot of room for creativity in that. And so, you know, at the time, I remember thinking like, well, I'll homeschool my kids. Like, that's, you know, what I'll do. And so I'll get my teaching credential because, you know, I don't, you know, there's not really anything else that I want to do. And I had a lot of friends getting engaged and married. And so in my mind, in my immature mind, that was the way it would go. And you know, obviously we're having kind of different conversations with our girls, like, if the Lord has you get married, not like, well, you'll go to college and then you'll get married. Like, it's that might not be the life that God calls you to. And so what are you passionate about? What do you love? So I don't think I was thinking really about much else than like getting married and having a family. So all of my decisions were sort of oriented from that place of like, this is what I know, this is what all the people I know do, and so this is what I will do. And so, yeah, being a teacher, I loved it. My personality loved the structure of it. I'm an Enneagram 3. I don't know if you do any Enneagram stuff.
You know
but
what? The pastor Josh from Fig Garden, when he was on, he started talking about it, and that guy, he impressed me like crazy. He went through each one and described it, and I mean, it's interesting to listen to, but I'm not the guy who can tell you. So I don't know what that is. But I know what you're talking about. But explain a little bit. What does that mean?
So those things are tricky for me, because I both love to understand people better, because it helps me like love them better. Like, I just feel like I can love people better when I understand what they're thinking. Also, I don't like putting people in boxes. I don't want to be put in a box. Like, I want to grow. I don't want to be who I am today, tomorrow. Like, I want to, you know. So I both love and hate those things. When the Enneagram first got really big in the Christian community, I was super anti, like, don't peg me. I don't like it, you know. Which is my tendency to kind of push back against whatever the new fad is in, you know, anywhere, Christianity, culture, anywhere, whatever show everyone's watching. I'm like, I'm not watching that. You know, I don't know. It's just something I do. I don't know why. And then I'm like a few years late where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll watch this now. And oh, this is why you guys liked it. Okay. You know? And so, being a 3, I'm a high achiever, really struggle, with the core longing of wanting people's approval. It's a big, big issue in my heart, in every arena, even business. Really, really seeking the approval of people and not God first. And so being really careful that my decisions aren't based around how people will respond or love me, but in what God requires of me, in terms of walking in love and humility and obedience to Him first. And so, as an Enneagram 3, achieving with teaching, it was like there was always a long list of stuff I'd have accomplished at the end of the day. I could get kids on a benchmark of, yes, you accomplished this. And so I loved that part of it. But now that I have my own kids, like, I don't really want to hang out with other people's kids all day. Like, my kids are a lot, and I want to give them all the energy I have. And I just can't imagine for me now being able to be a teacher, pouring into other kids, and then come home and being able to have enough in the tank for my own kids. So I mean, teachers are the best people in the world. I don't even know, how they, especially moms. Like, I think that, you know, people say like teaching is great for moms, and it is, but you're pouring into a lot of kids and worrying about a lot of kids and loving a lot of kids. And so, actually think it's really difficult to be a teacher as a mom if teaching's like in your heart to like love kids, you know.
Yes.
So there's just a lot
Yes.
of kids to love.
Yeah,
So
no, it was a lot like that with I was a waiter back in the day.
okay.
I remember when I first and I forget how old I was, like 19 or 20 or something like that. And I was really serious about it. I wanted to be the best waiter in the world, and I every day I wanted to get better at one thing, and I did get better and better.
Yeah.
But I noticed that at the end of the day, like I gave each customer, like they got all of me, you know, everything. And then when I go home, you know, I just didn't have anything left. And
Yeah.
I kind of had to decide, you know what, maybe 75% at work, and then I have something
Sure.
when I come back. But
Yeah.
there is something to that where it's, you know, you have to be aware of that. You have to be
Yeah.
wise of that. So
Yeah, for sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you go to, you said the Christian college, was that here locally, or did you go?
Riverside. Yeah, Riverside. I went out of town. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Where is Riverside? It's so familiar.
Riverside, Inland Empire. So it's like 4 hours from here. What's it near?
Okay.
Ontario, kind of past LA.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You went
Trying to think of what else is around there. I haven't been back really.
you left home and went out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How was that? Were you kind of excited?
I was, I was a swimmer, so I went to school on scholarship, and so I was busy. I did I sometimes, like, my girlfriends that I'm still in touch with have to remind me of like the fun things we did. It was like a blur because I had a practice twice a day. I most of the time had like 20 units. My scholarship was 4 years, so I did my undergrad and my teaching credential in 4 years. So I was busy. I was really good friends with the lunch ladies in the cafeteria. They would pack my lunch for me because I would never have time to eat. So they'd give me a to-go box, and I'd walk in and blow them a kiss and grab my thing and go to class. And so I did love it, and I did feel like I, learned more about God and myself, but I was busy. I was determined to not have a lot of debt, and getting out in 4 years was how I was going to do that. And so I kind of put my head down and went to work in a lot of ways. But I did have fun too. But mostly I remember getting up when it was still dark and getting in a swimming pool. It's cold and but yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
In your time in the dorms and stuff like that, was there any like spiritual conversation amongst each other, or was that just kind of for a specific time when you go to chapel or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I helped like launch the swim program. I was part of the inaugural team. So the program was new, and so I primarily spent time with the swim team. We had a lot of our classes together, especially undergrad. A lot of us lived together because our schedule was different. We had to be back at school and at school longer than like the class schedule because of practice and meets and stuff like that. So, I feel like there were some believers on the team, but there was, the school I went to didn't require that you have any sort of faith-based, church affiliation or anything to come. And I loved that because it was good for me to be around people who didn't know God. I needed that. But it did make for a mixture of lifestyles. And so I did have, different friends outside of the team. I would say probably primarily my conversations about faith happened in those. But yeah, I don't remember a ton of real deep theological conversations happening in college. We were good kids. We didn't, I didn't drink in college. Maybe I would have, but I just was on scholarship and I knew I'd lose it and I wasn't willing to do that. So I didn't drink in college at all. And I was too afraid to get in trouble. So, we were good kids. We went to the beach. We went to concerts. We did fun things. We went to Disneyland. We did fun things. But yeah, I mean, no, not a lot of like theological things happening either. You know, I wouldn't say we were bad kids or real spiritual kids. We were just kind of in
Yeah.
the middle,
Yep.
you know,
Um,
so.
so when you were 21, you said
Yep.
about 21 is kind of where you kind of started thinking or deciding. Was that still at school, or was that right after? Was that at the end of your schooling?
Yeah, I probably was still at school. I'm trying to think how that all happened. But yeah, like I was going to come home, I think. And I kind of had hit a point where I was graduating college, wasn't engaged, wasn't getting married, didn't have a job. So all the things I had thought would be weren't happening. And so I think I just kind of came to a different surrender of my own plans and decided to believe God. And believing God doesn't mean all of a sudden all your plans happen or all of a sudden things are clear by any means. But yeah, I think that's kind of what triggered that, you know, like kind of that longing for more in my life, of thinking I could figure it out and thinking that I could, you know, make it happen. And I had made a lot happen. And obviously I know that God did that, but you know, I was a fast swimmer. I was a good student. You know, I just was successful. And so I didn't have to, although now, and I knew it was God given. I knew it was God, but it still seemed pretty easy. And so then all of a sudden when things weren't easy, I was like, I can't manage life. You know, like I'm beyond, I've always been beyond, but you know, as a teenager, you're like, things are going well, you know? So I think when kind of the rubber met the road, so to speak, and life was about to happen, like you're an adult now, I think I just realized I needed God. You know, I couldn't function or thrive or live well without, you know, surrendering my life to the Lord. So yeah.
So when you met your husband, did he have a mustache?
He did not. He did not, but he's totally growing it back again. I need to post a picture of it. It looks so good. I love it. It's so weird. I don't know why I like it. I just do.
I don't either. I don't know why you like it either.
I like it.
Was the picture online? You have something online with him recently.
Probably. Yeah.
It looks cool.
He's funny. He mostly thinks it's like a joke, but I think it's because like I don't know, it's something different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Our life is pretty like routine. So I'm like, a mustache feels like a really big event happening. I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So the non-mustache, what's your husband's name?
Travis.
Travis, okay.
Yeah.
How did you meet Travis?
We met the summer before our senior year in college, just at the lake with some friends. And we both were kind of at a place where we were like not interested in meeting people or dating people. We had both dated different people in college and we're kind of sick of that. You know, I don't know. And so I went knowing he was going to be there, and someone had made a comment about you should meet Jess Visser. And I was like, okay, you know, like not interested. And it was one of those.
You didn't know you hadn't met him before or anything like that?
No, I mean, I knew who he was because he was friends with people I was friends with. And, you know, he went to a small Christian high school. I had a lot of friends there. It was real close to where I lived. And so I knew who he was. I actually knew his mom's side of the family, not knowing it was his family, but so I knew his family. And so, yeah, I mean, he knew who I was more. Like on our first date, he said like when you were on campus, like swimming, I'd like sneak over and like watch you. Cause like, you know, he likes redheads. So I was a redhead. And so, yeah, we knew who each other were, but not, you know, hadn't really thought much of it other than that. So, but it was pretty immediate, I would say, that we felt like a connection, and I pushed back against it. Like, no, you know, I'm not.
That's what you do.
That. Yeah, I'm not dating anybody. I'm not interested in that, you know? And so, yeah, we knew pretty quickly that we were going to be together, but he was really adamant about, he didn't want to be engaged very long. So we wouldn't be getting engaged until we could actually get married. So we did the long distance thing. He was at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. I didn't have a car. Mm-hmm. So he would come every once in a while I'd try to get home if I could, but primarily our relationship was mostly on the phone, which was not fun at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he bought me a cell phone finally. I didn't have a cell phone. He bought me one so we could talk. And so, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then his family was in the dairy business
Dairy
for
business. Yep.
2 generations probably,
Yeah,
or
so Trav's third generation dairy farmer.
really?
We actually live in the home that he grew up in. He lived
Yeah.
in from second grade until we got married, and his parents just about till 9 years ago lived here, and then we did like a house swap. Got a few houses on the place, and so since we had all the kids, we moved into the bigger house closer to the dairy so Trav could take the middle of the night calls if something goes wrong in the barn. And so yeah, so we're here and we live close by Trav's family. We love, doing business with them. We love them. They're part of our life daily, and it's really fun to have the kids growing up with grandparents that close. And yeah, so it's good. My mother-in-law actually works at the boys' school, and so she takes them to school a lot of mornings, so it's fun for them. And so yeah.
Right now, did you have any so being in the dairy business, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a culture to its own and stuff.
Yep.
Do you have
Yep.
any reservations of kind of that lifestyle? I'm sure you knew kind of what you were getting into.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, my dad didn't have a typical teacher's schedule. He always had other jobs and jobs in the summer. So I came from a place where my dad was always present, but always working. There wasn't like 8 weeks off in the summer where he didn't do anything, so I didn't have really expectation of that type of typical teacher schedule that you would, think. I remember my mom saying, one of these friends of ours said that you don't know what you're getting into and you probably shouldn't marry him because dairy is really hard. And I remember thinking like, that's not a reason to not marry someone. Like that doesn't make sense to me, but I was aware that there would be like some definite like transition that we would be in. And there was probably when we had Macy 2 years into our marriage, and then 6 months after she was born, we got pregnant again with our son, Cade, who actually only lived 8 weeks. He passed away when he was 8 weeks old. And then we had Tori really quickly after that. Like God gave us a lot of kids, like back to back to back.
Yeah.
And probably when Macy was like 5 or 6, and then Tori was, 3 or 4, and Brody was 2. That was probably the hardest on our marriage in terms of his schedule, mostly because I was exhausted and my perspective was off and my expectations were off. And he really, looking back now, I've totally asked him to forgive me because he was doing his best and he was present and in it with me and changing diapers and doing dishes and doing everything he could. But cows don't care about what's happening. And, they don't care if it's Christmas. They don't care if, they need to be fed and milked all the time. And I think actually living here has helped that too, because I feel more invested in what's happening in our business because I can see it. And I can help with things, and the kids can help with things. I think it really did help when we moved here because I can see that there's a cow that's struggling that needs Trav, and I want him to go help with that versus being just a few miles away, but removed enough that I wasn't connected to the value of it, the importance of it, and really the love of it that he has, that I do have now. And, we love living here, and it's grown, I think, my love for the industry and what it does for families, what it means to be a kid growing up on a dairy farm. I mean, it's really such a gift to learn how to work hard. And there's so many points to the dairy that require just full integrity and high character, that the way that you're producing your product really matters. It matters to the people that are consuming it. You want people to benefit from your product. And so I've grown in my love for the value in that. And it's something I've spent more time learning about and appreciating. And so yes, there was a transition period, but mostly because I had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And I'm tired. So,
well, and then, I mean, we kind of sped through it there, but I mean, you had a huge loss as well.
Yep.
You guys have kind of like beat the odds. I mean, a child's death typically tears a family apart. I'm sure was there anything specifically that kind of helped you guys or you personally through that? Was there someone or something?
Yeah, we did have people that had lost children that came alongside us really quickly.
Okay.
And actually the couple that came alongside, their son died was injured in a woodshop accident at high school, and Travis was there that day that it happened. So we had kind of a connection with them for a long time. So they came alongside us. Our families were super supportive during the first days and months, but I think without knowing what we were doing, and I see now as just a gift from the Lord, two things. We had both, from the Lord been given this desire to trust God. And so I think we knew that we could trust him in that too. I mean, it was hard, and we went through all the stages. We were mad, we were confused. He passed away during a nap, but his autopsy report showed like they couldn't diagnose. It wasn't a SIDS case. It wasn't, there was nothing they could diagnose. So that was hard because we couldn't pinpoint anything, and we were nervous about having more kids. I think that's why God gave Tori to us so quickly, because I don't know if I decided, I don't know if I would have had kids, just sheer fear that something else would happen. We had Macy, so we knew we could have a living child. So because we didn't know, there was a lot of things we had to process through, just the not knowing. And then, really coming to a place where we're either going to believe that God was the creator and sustainer of life, or he wasn't, kind of was like, that was like, you either believe it fully or you don't at all. There's no middle ground to that really, for us. And so, we decided by the grace of God to believe that, like, God's in control. We're going to trust him. But also we committed to feel it all. We never took sleeping pills. And that's, people do that and people need to, and I am not against it. I've recommended it. I'm not, making a judgment call on that. But for us, we just didn't want to medicate at any point. We wanted to feel everything fully, and we wanted to walk in it fully. I felt pretty aware of my fear that I wouldn't be able to be a good mom to Macy. She was the only other one we had at the time. But even that was a gift that God had given her to us. We laughed the day Cade died because Macy did something funny. We were laughing already because she was with us still. And so, I think that I just thought, like, I remember thinking even the day after, like, I'm going to let her live. I'm not going to keep her in a bubble, and I'm going to let her climb trees. I'm going to let her get her driver's license. She can study abroad if she wants. Like, I will not act like she's about to die, and I think that was something that I really had to ask the Lord to give me strength again, to believe that he was in control, and that he's the only one who keeps breath in our lungs anyway. And so I'm going to be responsible, do my best, but believe that God's in control, and that I can trust him with the lives of my kids. It was a hard 5 years, I would say. And I remember thinking, like, I just need like 5 years to go by. So when we got to that 5-year mark, it felt like a big deal. Like, okay, we're surviving. God's doing what he promised. We didn't know if we didn't know if he would. Like, we knew he was faithful. We knew we could trust him, but like, this feels like too much, and then there was some things that were hard after that in our marriage, because we did start grieving differently. Travis is a more, he'll just have a random hard day. Mine are usually connected by time. So like Cade's birthday and his death, we call that Cade season, like the 8 weeks that he was here. It's usually when fall is, coming and the leaves are changing. And so I do kind of have
so now's the season right now.
Yeah. Like, I do have some moments of that where, kind of in this season from August 28 to October 28, where I'm just more aware, and in good ways too. I'm remembering the faithfulness of God. I'm worshiping him for what he's accomplished in our family, and that we are thriving as a family. And by the world statistics, we shouldn't be, probably. And so, just thankful that that we serve a powerful God that heals that way. And knowing that there's parts of our hearts that won't be healed this side of heaven, but that's where the actual sweet stuff is, because that's where ministry comes in, and that's where walking with the broken comes in. I have so many women in my life who have lost children. It's like the worst ministry, right? Like you're dealing with devastated mamas and baby-sized caskets, and it's awful. But I'm grateful that people aren't walking alone, that I can be, part of the church body and functioning in a way to love people,
Yeah.
in those moments.
I'm super glad that I got to connect with Verena. I'm sure you
Yeah.
would assume that you guys know each other and stuff.
Yeah, we do ministry together. Yeah.
I've had things not exactly like that, but similar, and I know people, and I never knew of ministries that would help. Just kind of a normal church situation, but not like a specific. And so I'm glad I know about you guys, so I can send people away and stuff like that. But yeah, well, because I want to tie this in, and hopefully this works. But a lot of what I feel like your, not identity, but something that I would, if somebody asked me about you and I had a very few words to say, I would pick joy. And I don't know if that's always been, and it's found its dips maybe through your life, but definitely right now, joy definitely exudes from you. I can tell that it's real. You're not, trying to stir it up all the time. But has that been kind of just something that's happened? Have you worked at it? What is joy in your life?
Yeah, thank you. That's really kind. I think we should do that for each other more often. Like, hey, I see this in you. Like, that's really powerful. So thank you for that. That was super encouraging and unexpected. But I think that joy, if we define it with the gospel, which we have to, it's a lot different than being happy. I wouldn't say that I've been super happy in the last few years, not because things aren't great, but because I've been processing some really hard stuff with the Lord, regen, counseling, things like that, where I really feel like in a new way, I surrendered different things to the Lord. I was like, man, I'm almost 40 and I'm noticing some patterns of bitterness and unforgiveness and people pleasing, that it's just starting to affect my relationships. And I see that, and I don't want it to affect my relationship with my kids, and they're about to be teenagers. So I better figure this out. Like, Lord, I need you to redeem this stuff in my life, or it's going to keep, I'm going to keep giving that brokenness to all of my relationships. And so the joy really though is knowing that, like, God has redeemed me. He is redeeming me. I'm not a hopeless case. None of us are. We can't fall too far for the arm of God to reach us and redeem us and change us. And so I think that joy has remained, even on days where I feel like really sad, just in uncovering like sinful patterns of thinking and believing and lies that I believe, that I think a lot of us believe lies about ourselves and people and God, and learning how to replace that with truth. And really, like, when God talks about like putting on armor for battle, like, that's been real in my life in the last few years, of really feeling like I've been going to war against some things that are not of God in my life. And that's caused some dissension in relationships too, because I've had to have boundaries, and I've had to rethink decisions I've made and make different decisions. And sometimes I haven't done that well, and I haven't explained myself well, and learning how to do that too. And so it's been a hard few years, but it's been so good, specifically in our home, in my marriage, in my relationship with my kids, in friendships and ministry. I mean, I feel like the Lord's really bringing so much fruit. And so I think, even in women's Bible study right now, we're studying First Peter, and Peter's reminding the people that they're exiled, that this world isn't their home, their inheritance isn't here. And I think when Cade died, that really became our sort of battle cry, in grief of like, this is just for a little while. We're not living for here. We're not putting our hope here. It's easy to get caught up in it, obviously, all the time. But just living with this different perspective of, the world is hard. We're trying to live together. We're all broken. We all need Jesus, and we're going to like mess that up and hurt each other. And, people are going to die. People are going to suffer. We're going to suffer of illness and our bodies breaking down. And so I think that joy is something, there is an aspect of that to fight for, but that's where that letting God renew my mind and preaching the gospel to myself and letting God's word fill my mind. That's where that joy can really remain, even if there's not happiness, like I think it's important to define the two. And so that joy can't be stolen even in the midst of, suffering. They can live together. And they need to for believers.
Yeah. I get kind of the same thing from you as I did David, as I was born and raised in Porterville.
Okay.
And, so I'm more familiar with the churches, being raised in the church and stuff there. And so I'm learning about the churches here in Fresno area. And I really liked David, that's in the Madera, the Well. Been able to spend some time with him, and I love the humility and the openness of struggle from a senior pastor. I know back in the day that it just wasn't common, and I love how you've been able to be so open and honest with people. Is that regeneration? Does that have any kind of I don't even know what the word would be, like, not taboo, but it just does it feel like almost anybody can go and be a part of it and not be looked down upon? Did it recently, right? Yourself.
Yeah. So I just finished in May. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, I think that I've been plugged in primarily to the women's ministry at the Well, and that's really been where I've been sharpened the most, where there's women that are just phenomenal people, but also students of God's word and open about their struggles. And so I think, I can't speak to a lot of other churches, but the Well is really the first church that I've been a part of that really has a culture of like, we're broken and we need each other and we're not going to pretend that we're not broken. I do think that Regen has a lot to do with that. I think that did shift the culture a lot when Dave Oswald launched that ministry at the Well. I do think that's been a significant thing that has shifted it, mostly because it's given some language that like a common language that we all have, where we talk about reconciliation. We've defined that. We talk about making amends. We've defined that.
Yeah.
We're putting words to things like codependency, self-preservation, things that we give us some language to the patterns of sin. And I think that's important only because it helps us identify it. God's word is powerful enough to identify those sin, but I think when we're in relationship with each other, it's important for us to be able to name those things, to name sin, and to give it a definition type of a thing. At least for me, it's helped me identify when the patterns start, so I can say, oh Lord, like, come in and help me right now, because I see the way this plays out, So Regen, though, it's different in that it is a recovery program. But it's actually a discipleship program. And so,
it seems like,
so it really is, it's discipleship through recovery. And it's different than other recovery programs in that it's I've heard it said different ways. Like, if you have any relationships, you need Regen. If you have parents, you need to go to Regen. If you have any baggage, any sin at all, Regen will be great. Now, it's not about Regen. It's not about the Regen program. It's God's word. It's the Holy Spirit that changes us. Regen just gives us some tools to do that. So it's not Regen that's going to save people, but it is a really safe, healthy place and really healthy process, really gospel-centered, biblical-centered place to do that. And so, it's for anybody. And like anybody. And I did it actually with the Well staff, which I loved because these are people who like are supposed to have it all together, right? Like they work at a church, and that's not true. But I think that that pressure, if you're a key leader or a staff member, there is that pressure to have the answers, to have things figured out, and so it was really incredible to walk through the depth of it.
That's what I love. I've always been very passionate about providing ministry for other leaders and pastors, because it's so tempting to just become that righteous person that everyone sees in front of church, and it's so dangerous. It's super dangerous for pastors or anybody. And I've loved the flavor or the culture that I've experienced from the Well and the leaders so far. So I just love that about you guys.
It's really neat.
That's cool. So kind of coming to our end here. I see you going. Me and my lady are going to Morro Bay area. And I noticed you guys were there not too long ago. But I see you doing like business, like get-togethers with people and stuff like that. And that looks super fun. What are you guys doing? What are you guys about there?
Yeah, so I launched my business about 3 years ago on accident. I just tried some samples of this product line and ended up really loving it, bought into it for the discount, and realized that what I had like accidentally started was kind of an answer to some prayers. I'd started asking the Lord for a job. But I know because of Travis's schedule, I really wanted to make sure that I could still honor our family time and his job first. Because so much of what I do to help him is to keep things going in our home. And he's, like I said, super present, super hands-on, but there are ways that our family works better if there's certain things that I can do to be a helper to him in that. And I actually really love that. So I didn't want to sacrifice home time. And because his schedule is pretty regular, but also he gets random time off, like that weekend that we got to go to Morro Bay, like that's a last minute thing always. We never know, we can't plan too far in advance. And so wanted to stay flexible for that. Also really wanted to be able to go on field trips with my kids when field trips were still a thing. They're not a thing anymore now, but wanted to be present with my kids. And so realized that this box of shampoo I purchased would give all that to me. And then there was this piece too of wanting to hone in some leadership skills and public speaking. And I love team stuff. Being an athlete, I kind of missed that team thing. And so I just was using the products, and my husband and I weren't really sure how to do social media selling well. I think it's a pretty tricky thing where people are following you primarily because you're friends. They want to know about your family. So when you introduce a product, it's tricky. You want to honor what people are there for, and you don't want to push things on people. And so it was tricky for us. We didn't want to be salesy. I think there's a lot of ideas around network marketing that I had people in my life who had not done it well. They'd only ever talk to me about their product, and that was frustrating, so I just had kind of a bad taste in my mouth of what that was. And so one day Trav kind of flipped my hair over my shoulder and was like, you need to start talking to people about this. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but I don't want you calling 300 people. So put it on your social media. Let's see what happens. And so kind of with his go ahead, I just did one little boomerang on my Instagram, and the rest is kind of history. So
he was just kind of flirting with you, and it just
he was like, you should tell people about your hair. And I was like, wait. And he was like, he loved the fact that the products, we were looking to be more natural in our products. We were having teenagers. I was paying more attention to ingredients. And so it's a non-toxic product line. And then he was loving it because I wasn't having to do my hair anymore. I was walking out the door with wet hair, and he was like, we're getting our life back. It takes you an hour to blow dry your hair. So it was kind of a joke for him. Like, I'm not waiting for you to get ready anymore. I love this stuff, and so, he kind of was like, you should tell people you're loving this, like, just see what happens. And really what I found was, I think people look at companies like that and it's like, well, it's a shampoo company. It's just really so much more than that. It really is community. It really is It's a people business. It's relational, and I love that. Part of why I've loved it is because it put me in pockets of women I never would have known. I realized that my circle was really small. I was around people who kind of looked like me, thought like me, talked like me, believed like me, and I felt really convicted that not only was I not growing, but I wasn't having to share my faith. I wasn't having to put words to things I believed and why, because everyone believed what I believed, so I didn't have to defend it ever or, articulate it. And so that's been huge. I've been super thankful for that. But what I love about our company is it's centered around gratitude. So we have a whole part of our company that's just gratitude. And anytime we get together in groups, anytime we have any event, there's always a gratitude portion connected to it, whether it's something with education, local nonprofits, and that's really my heart. So having my business has allowed our family to give more, and that's really something we say as a team and as a business and a company culture is to make an impact wherever you live. And we don't grow so that we can keep, we grow so we can give. So the more we grow, the more we can give away, the more we can influence the communities around us in ways that go far beyond people having good hair. So, and now we've launched into skincare, and now we have wellness. So we have, collagen powders and energy drinks and things like that are all, naturally based. And so it's just fun. It's grown me a ton as a person. I love my team. They're all over the place, all over the country, and it's fun. So
yeah, you guys look like you're having a blast. You're
having
a fun time. That's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everybody. Sometimes people get so super serious about business, and it's people want to be in business with you because they like you and have a good time. So
yeah,
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Sure.
Yeah.
I have one last quick question. What are buffalo wing pretzel things? Oh no, hold on a second.
Have you seen, like, they come in big bags at Costco? They're like blue and white. They're like the really thin pretzels.
Okay.
Have you seen them?
No.
Do you? No? Okay. Well, so they make all different flavors now. They make like a everything bagel flavor, and they make like sour cream and onion, I think. And so they're a buffalo wing flavor. So it tastes like a buffalo wing, but it's a pretzel chip.
Okay, interesting.
And if you dip it in cream cheese, it just is so good.
I saw the picture or something you posted of it, and I was like, I have no idea what that is.
They're so good. They have them I've seen them at Save Mart, and I've seen them at Target. So they're just in like the chip aisle or like the cracker aisle. I don't even know the brand.
Yeah, and cream cheese. Add
And
the cream cheese in there.
Yep, just dip it in there. It's real good.
I was waiting this whole time to ask you that.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, they're like pretzels, but they're super thin, so they're like better for you, and probably not after you dip them all in cream cheese, but whatever. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jess, thank you very much. How can people connect with you? Online, offline, whatever?
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is Jess Viss. I don't know if you want to throw my email on there. That's a really easy way to get a hold of me, but a lot of my speaking engagements, ministry stuff, and business all kind of run through Instagram. It's just the easiest way to get a hold of me, but I'm on Facebook too, Jessica Wild Visser. And thankful for the time. Thanks so much for having me.
Perfect. You got it. Thank you. I'll put all that stuff in the description. And thank you once again, Jess. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Have a really good day.
I'll see you guys later.